There are student activities advisors and professionals who work with students on campuses, see me give a talk. They book a room and put 100 chairs out. And there were only 10 students, including the students who booked me from the student activities board. And in the middle of the talk, 4 of them had to leave to go to class. And so halfway through the talk, I only had 6 left in a room of 100 seats.
Were you disappointed at all?
If I had been a younger, less experienced, I would have crumbled. But we got 10 people, and these 10 people are lucky. Because if I had 100, it would be the signature speech, word for word, that I always give. I got 10, so I get to give the talk they need to hear, because I can actually meet each one of these people as individuals, and that is exactly what I did.
So Brian, you were at this event recently, and the photos you shared on social media didn't show a very full room. What happened?
Yeah. So it was a college campus. I actually built my career as a comedy magician in the college market, which, if you're outside of the U.S., is just something that people do not understand. Outside of the U.S., the college market is not a professional market for entertainment or for speakers. But in the U.S., this is a huge industry. Every college student pays, as part of their tuition, is required to pay as part of their tuition, a student activities fee. And for that, the campus is required to put on events every week on campus that are safe for students to attend. And they have to have lots of different types because different students have different preferences. So there's always got to be something that a student can find because they paid in to it. So everything can't be a movie night. Everything can't be a comedian. They just have to have lots of different things. And speakers, as a magician, it was a lot easier because at least pre-pandemic, it's been different since, but I've been retired from magic. But pre-pandemic, you had a magic show on campus. Hundreds of students would come out to as a magic show or a comedian or a hypnotist or whatever. But as a speaker, you imagine you're 18, you're 19 years old, you're in your dorm with your friends, and you find out that there's going to be a motivational speaker or a human connection specialist giving a talk that's not required. It's not for grades. It's not for anything. You don't get anything for showing up to this.
I can just see the eye rolls.
Right. It's like, who's going to that? I mean, even pre-pandemic, those were hard. Post-pandemic, getting people out of their dorms or off their phones at all. Even the promise of free food wasn't doing it anymore. They're like, yes, no, thank you. So they were.
Sounds right.
Yeah. But so it's like, so why do you do it, right? So why do you do it? Well, the topic that I do in the college market is the same topic I do in corporate. It's human connection, but the framing is different for students. So there are student activities advisors and professionals who work with students on campuses that see me give a talk in some context about human connection and interpersonal relationships and interactions. And they're like, our students need to hear you talk about this. Like, they need to hear this. I'm like, yeah, but they don't wanna, right? Like, they don't want to. So it's not that helpful that they need to, but they will occasionally convince me, often with dollars, that I should come do this. And we do our best. We say you can promote the fact that there's going to be magic as part of it, and I've got this viral TED talk, and we give them as much as we can. But they always, it's like the if we build it, they will come. They put out 100 seats. They always do this. They book a room and put 100 chairs out, trying to will an audience into existence. And for this particular one, I mean, they did everything. There were flyers all over campus. They'd sent out emails. There were social media posts tagging me. It was all professional and beautiful, and 100 chairs. And there were only, I think, 10 students, including the students who booked me from the student activities board. And in the middle of the talk, 4 of them had to leave to go to class because of the timing of the talk. And so halfway through the talk, I only had 6 left in a room of 100 seats, right? And so that is the photo that that you saw. And yeah.
How long did you wait before you actually started?
Oh, we started like 2 minutes. I am totally against starting late. I think it's rude to the people who were there. I will give 5 minutes at most. There was a period of time at college campuses in particular in like 2017, 2018 where I would be asked to wait, even as a magician. They'd say, can you wait 10 minutes? Let's wait 15 minutes. At one point, somebody said, can we wait 20 minutes? And I'm like, I don't like 5 minutes, fine, 10 minutes, but 15, 20. One time, a college said to me, we're going to start at 1/2 past. I was like, 1/2 past, 30 minutes late. No. The show starts at 5. My contract is 5 to 6 for the show. And they're like, yeah, we're going to start at 5:30. And I was like, that makes no sense. And they go, nobody will show up at 5. I'm like, but you promoted it for 5, right? And they said, yeah. And they said, but our students don't show up on time. They will all walk in at about the 20-minute after mark. And I was so annoyed at hearing this. I was like, no, what? I'm going to ignore that. I'm just going to start 5 minutes late. But at 5 minutes after, there were 0 people in the room. There were no students. And I waited, and about 22 minutes after, literally like 85 students showed up. They just all came in together. And I remember thinking, if I were not me, I would do a 30-minute show instead of an hour show. My contract was 5 to 6, so that's fine. Started at 5:30, ended 6. I didn't. I did the whole show. Obviously, I would never do that. But yeah, so no, I only waited about 2 minutes. I was like,
how was it to see, just 10 people in a room and then 6?
Yeah, so seeing 10 people in a room of 100, it's interesting. If we had 10 people in my living room, it would have felt like a high energy talk, right? Because you stand right there, you're all in it together. The energy, the jokes, the laughter will carry. You can huddle up, yeah. Right? There's something about physical space. But if you put 10 people in a room of 100, and by the way, 100 people would feel like overwhelming in your living room, but in a amphitheater would feel like nobody was there, right? It doesn't matter how many people, the size of the room and the setup of the chairs, all this stuff. There's so many things that are quote unquote out of a speaker's control that have a huge impact on the success of a presentation. So if I had been a younger, less experienced speaker, and I remember this happening, I would have crumbled, gotten really nervous. Nobody's here. No one's going to laugh. It's going to be so quiet and awkward. I can't, how am I going to deliver these stories? Are going to feel strange and theatrical. But the truth is, this happened, at the time of this recording, just like 6 weeks ago or whatever. I just was like, all right, we got 10 people, and these 10 people are lucky, because if I had 100, it would be the generic talk, not generic, but like it would be the talk. It would be the signature speech, word for word, that I always give if it was a full room. I got 10. So I get to give the talk they need to hear, because I can actually meet each one of these people as individuals, and that is exactly what I did. Mm-hmm.
Were you disappointed at all? Like, tiny little bit?
I'm not paid by the student. Check's the same. No. Yeah. Disappointed? Right. Listen, it's like, it's an interesting question. Where would you imagine disappointment would come from? Or would you have been disappointed? Is that why you asked? Like, where did that come from?
I would have been relieved. I would have honestly been relieved.
You would have been relieved?
Yes, because as a designated introvert, I would have felt much more at ease in a small group where I could kind of, be level with these people, these 10 people, and talk to them and have a bit more of an interactive conversation than a more of a one-way speech that, 1 to 100 would have been. But I can imagine that other speakers might have been disappointed because they were promised a big audience and they didn't get it.
So I'm neither. I was not disappointed. I love, give me a spotlight, a giant stage, and 1,000 people or 2,000 people in the audience any day. Like I'm ready right now. I love the energy of, almost the, well, I can be honest about it. There's a real power in being able to command a room of 1,000 people, and then
it's thrilling.
And then when you tell the story that's really dramatic, and then you pause, and 1,000 people are dead silent. You're like, oh, it's so good, So I do, and there's an energy that carries through a room of that many people where the really interesting bits become profound because of the energy that carries the room.
Just because of the size.
Just because of the size. Whereas with 10 people, you could feel in your head like that was really insightful, but there's no energy in the room. And so you don't know if anybody else felt like that. So you may not actually interpret the message as profound as you initially thought it was because no one else reacted. On the flip side, I love a room of 10 people because I literally I said, you don't need to introduce me. Hi, we've all been chatting already. I'm Brian, in case you didn't get my name. I'm the face that you saw on the poster on the way in. That's me. And, and I said, here's the deal. We have two options. I said, I can deliver the talk that I've given 1,000 times. It's a show and it's a blast. I can do it as if we got a room of 100 people here. Or I can deliver the opening that I would normally deliver, frame this presentation, the hour we're going to spend together, and then I'm going to sit down with you right here and ask you what's going on, and I can steer this in any way that you're interested in. And everybody was just like that, like right away, just that. I said, great, let's do it.
What do you think helped you? What in your skills, in your knowledge, in your attitude, what helped you stay present in that moment and not kind of go into this narrative in your head that you could have had about, oh, this sucks, this is great, this is whatever, interpretation?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the skill is really earned confidence, right? I don't need 1,000 people. Listen. I did the entertainer thing. I did the keynote speaker thing. Like I've had enough applause, enough standing ovations, enough laughter for a lifetime. Like I am confident that people will find me interesting and engaging.
Your cup is full.
My cup is full. And so what I'm interested in this phase of my speaking career is how big an impact can I make? And it's actually easier to make a big impact on a small amount of people, because I could ask literally like, Stacy, like this specific person who I learned earlier is 19 and is a nursing major, but she's not sure if she wants to actually become a nurse because she's thinking maybe that. I can say, Stacy, so in that situation, like if you asked the question that I just gave you as a question that you could ask somebody, would that feel like a question that you could ask somebody? Or if not, like I could ask this individual human and make a specific impact, which means it's a much bigger impact on that person versus impacting many more people at a much more shallow level when you're in front of a room of 100 or 1,000, because you can't personalize.
Yeah. And what about someone who might not have your years of experience? How would they manage this?
Yeah. So the way to manage it, who doesn't already have the earned confidence, is the purpose of giving a talk is not simply to move people, but to move them to action, right? Change requires change. If people have not changed something that they think or believe or do as a result of your talk, you have, as far as I'm concerned, you've failed as a communicator. That's my bar, right? And so you look at this, you got 10 people and you were expecting 100. You could, okay, so the video is not going to look great, right? It's not going to be great for my speaker reel. So now that is not why I'm here anymore.
That's when you do the close-up.
Right. You go, okay, so it's worse if I think that that's the goal, but it's better if my goal is deeply make an impact on the people who are here. So it's like you just ask yourself, well, what's the goal? Let's adjust the goal to meet the room. Like meet people where they're at. This is the room I got. It's like last week I hired out of pocket a 2-camera video crew to come film a workshop that I was giving, because I rarely get workshops filmed, and I was so excited that I had a great video crew coming with a guy on a gimbal, and it was going to be amazing. And then I walked into the room the day before the workshop to get a feel for it and send some photos so the videographer could get a sense of it. And it was just the ugliest, grossest, like low-end hotel conference room you've ever seen. And I immediately knew my goal of getting this beautiful footage. I've already paid these people. It's too late. I've paid them. They're coming. Or they're not coming, but I've paid them, right? And it's just like, okay, you're not going to get the kind of footage you originally thought you were going to get. But what can you get in this room knowing the video crew is coming, right? And so I had a different conversation with the videographer. I said, listen, we're not going for what. This is probably not going to be the fancy thing at the front of my speaker reel. Here's what I'm actually looking for. I'm looking for really authentic conversational moments. I'm looking for you to capture the look on someone's face when they have an insight. When I've responded to their question, I want you to capture the Q&A portions more than than the formal presentation parts, because I have great footage of that. So it's like, what do I have to work with, and what's the best possible outcome given the circumstances? That's the question.
I love that. So what I'm hearing are two things. One is remaining adaptable and adjusting the goal to the situation, but also negotiating what happens with the other people involved, either the students in
Totally.
the room or your camera crew. So kind of making the best out of what you got together with whoever else is involved.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I mean, adaptable, it shocks me how many people in professional entertainment and professional speaking are not adaptable. That, well, in my rider that you signed off on, it said, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anymore, right?
the map is not the territory.
Exactly. It's just like, so first of all, you do the job no matter what. You do the job, right? Which is why I tell all of our clients, you have to be able to give your presentation without the slides. The slides cannot be necessary because the slides might break. The electricity might go out. The projector might be too small for the audience to really see it, right? So
Presentation is you.
you must be able to deliver with no microphone, no electricity, no slides. You know, the room is set up wrong. There's people behind you. It's your job is to deliver the message. And so, to be fair, you asked about like a newer speaker who was less confident, and all those things I just talked about, that's the chasm. That's why it's so hard, right? Everybody wants to be a $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 keynote speaker. Of course they do, right? Like experts in every field want to be that person, and they think, well, I'm really good. You know, I'm really interesting. I have good stuff. It's like the chasm between being good enough and being that. Like good enough is no longer good enough. And so on one hand, I would say to a newer speaker who's not confident, stay in the moment, recognize the opportunity, adjust your expectations according to the room. And also, when you're not at an event, you need to be doing the prep work for all of those kinds of situations. You need to be doing an unreasonable amount of imagining of all the ways things can go wrong, right?
Yeah. I know that people who work in video and photography, they have like a reflex of looking at the light whenever they walk into a space. They just see like all the angles, like where's the light coming from? That screen is flickering. That's a bit too green. So maybe for speakers, that would be an interesting exercise to just imagine what would it be like for me to speak in this room, in every room that they walk into.
Totally, yeah. It's a great exercise. If I had to give a talk in this room to these people that I don't know, what would I do?
What would I have to do?
Go? Right.
Yeah.
What would I have to do in order to have the best possible outcome? And it doesn't mean the best possible outcome is context dependent. You know, I last year I ended up in kind of like having only 10 people when you're expected 100, that is a very easy situation as far as I'm concerned compared to situations I've been in. Last year, oh my God, this room was not front to back. It was side to side, this big long room with the stage at the front. So people are dead left and dead right, where the screens are here, which means most people can't even, because their angle can't even really see the screens. They can barely see me. And then this room had like 500 people packed into a room meant for 400. People were sardines at round tables. The heat, it was so hot and sweaty, and they had booked me to do 90 minutes, but in a keynote situation. So it was 90 minutes on stage without the ability to do a workshop. Nobody could move. Can't do a workshop. Can't have anybody get up and shift around because no one can move. It'd be pandemonium. Hot and sweaty. They had me as the kickoff. So they haven't even. I'm in between them and the normal stuff and the food and everything. And then at the last second, the client said, "Actually, the situation got changed around. The schedule got changed around. We actually need you to fill 2 hours." So it was just me up there for 2 hours. Now here's the thing. I love this client. If they're ever listening, I love this client. Love the group. I would do it again in a heartbeat. I would work with them again. But as a speaker, when I realized the situation I was going to be in, I had a moment where I went, this will not be the speech that gets 100% in the feedback forms. There is no way for me to get everybody in this room to love me and be on board. Because even if I could get everybody on board for the first 45 minutes or an hour, some of those people that loved me in that first hour, by the end of 2 hours and they're sweating and tired and hungry, they're not going to like me as much. There's just no way. So this isn't that speech. My job is to get people through this with some takeaways and not hating me as best as I can, right? Like that's the job.
And how'd it go?
It went great. Got like 97s, 96s instead of 99s and hundreds. It was about as good as you could possibly do. But there were a handful. I basically never get negative feedback these days on forums. There were a handful of negative feedback, and the feedback was, I wish it was shorter. I was like, me too. You know what I mean? I was like, yeah. I was like, I'm with you, man. Like, can't be upset about that. So you adjust your expectations to the situation that you're in.
So you mentioned this gap between, people who are good and people who get hundreds every time and who get paid 10, 20,000 a speech. What does that path look like? We're on the speaker path here. So let's see if we were to tease it out. So we already have like one potential exercise to give people. What else? What else could they do?
mean, that path is so vast. I think the biggest thing about that path that people misunderstand. So there's, it's interesting. There's two ways to look at it. On one hand, it doesn't have to take as long as people think it does. People think, it would take 5 or 10 years to get to those kind of fees. And it's not the case. There are people that we work with who they are absolute experts in their industry. They can charge those fees tomorrow so long as they can deliver the presentation well. They don't need to work up to those fees if they are proper experts. There are people who've never given a paid keynote before, but their first paid keynote is 20 grand. They don't have to earn the fee. The fee is for the transformation that you can create. So the fee, I usually describe it as the larger the paradigm shift, the bigger the fee. The bigger you can shift people, which is why some people get confused why they can only get $500 for a speech. And it's because they're talking to their own industry. They're a salesperson who's talking to salespeople. Like, yeah, you can't, how big a paradigm shift can you make? You can give them some tips. You can be interesting. They can think about it a little bit. You can give them a new tactic to try. I'm not going to pay much for that. But a salesperson who goes into a room of nurses and says, here's what I learned in sales. Here's how you can use these techniques to make better connections with your patients so they have better outcomes. There's a $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 speech because the paradigm shift is so much bigger. So that's the fees. But like, if you're not the expert, if you're not like that kind of an expert and you're like, you kind of want to be like a motivational speaker, you've kind of got a thing you care about, or you've got a story. We hear it a lot. I went through something terrible. I came out better for it. I want to share my story so that other people can be, inspired. So you're essentially putting yourself into the bucket of motivational speaker, inspirational speaker. That is a much harder path to those fees. And that path relies on absolutely mastering the craft of speaking. That path is a lot, like for all of the work that we do.
So that's more about the experience that you can give people? Is that
totally.
what I hear?
That's about the experience.
Rather than the problem you
right.
solve.
So the best path to high fees, the best and shortest path to high fees is to genuinely be an expert and solve a real problem. To solve any real problem for a group of people, because that you can just do that. But the people who are not often our clients, these are the people we often turn away for what it's worth from our program because we are essentially a message design firm. The people who basically sell inspiration, they sell happiness, they sell an experience. You have to spend, that is like being an entertainer essentially. The content matters a little bit less if what you're selling is the experience. And so it's like, fine, then what you need to do is treat it like you're a comedian or a magician. Go to every open mic night, go do every free, like, you know how long it takes somebody to develop the chops to be a magician and command a room for an hour and command the fees, for a comedian, you know how long it takes comedians to develop an act that's worth paying for? Years and years and years and hundreds of hours or thousands of hours of stage time and bombing and bombing and bombing. You have to be willing to bomb, and you can't get paid and bomb. So you have to work for free because you're going to bomb until you figure out how to be that person that for an hour is delivering just an absolutely outrageously fun experience. That's flight time.
I love that you put this on the table because we see so much of the glam around speaking, and it's either a mystery or people think that this happened overnight for some reason, like this person is so brilliant and they can just do it. Or, for whatever reason they got there, and nobody thinks about the bombing part.
Oh my God.
Just go ahead and bomb. That's part of the path.
I've had people ask me, when you were a magician, did you ever screw up a trick? I'm like, what do you mean, did you ever screw up a trick? There is no way to get good at it without screwing up publicly in front of strangers on stage. Boo, right? Like, there is no other way. Comedians, you can't learn what's funny until you find out what's not funny. Bombing is part of it. And as I think speakers, it's actually, in some ways, it's harder for speakers to know if it's working or not. Because when you bomb as a speaker, people kind of just tune you out. When you bomb,
they're very polite.
They're very polite. That was really interesting what you had to say.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. I think it must be so hard to go up there. I couldn't do that, right? That's what you hear. If somebody goes, oh, I couldn't do what you do, they thought you sucked. Because that's not what people say when they actually thought you were amazing. They talk about the content. They go, oh, that thing you said made me think of this, and then they tell you a story. It's like, I could never do what you do. That's them going, you sucked, but it was very brave, right? Mm-hmm. So that's how you can tell.
Yeah.
So, but like, I think for a speaker, you have to, it's harder to find places to bomb. We have open mics for comedians and like magicians and stuff for a reason. It's a safe place where everybody in the room knows if it's Tuesday night open mic, these people are probably not going to be very good. That's what they're there for. So it's fine. We've all agreed this is a training ground. As a speaker, where do you do that? It's really hard to find places to do it. If you do it inside of somebody's program where like you get to practice on all the other people in the program, it's not real feedback because those are all other aspiring speakers. So they don't react the way that a real audience would.
They're very supportive.
They're very supportive, which is not helpful. Like you don't learn anything from that. So the way to start on that journey, to start your speaker path, if you are really in that place, is you develop a 5 or 10 minute presentation on one very specific topic. There's a specific point. I want to make this point with this takeaway. I'm going to tell these 2 stories and put up this one statistic and whatever. 5 or 10 minutes. And then you reach out to all the local organizations, the chambers of commerce and the
NGOs, professional associations,
all the business networking groups, and you say, hey, and you get really honest. You go, here's who I am, here's my background. I'm trying to build a speaking presentation that eventually I would be able to take to these kind of places. I've got a 10-minute version that I'm looking for some audiences to hear and give me critical feedback. I think this topic would be beneficial to your audience because of X, Y, and Z. Would you find, would this be totally off the table? Would you be totally unwilling to consider bringing me in for this? And if you're super honest about it, you'll get some people who will say, sure, come on in, because they know. And then you have to do it for real. You give the talk as best as you can, and then you give people feedback forms, and you get real feedback. There's different types of feedback forms. There's feedback forms designed to get testimonials for your marketing. That's what we use in professional speaking, because I don't actually care really anymore what the audience thinks I could have done better. I know what I do as a speaker. I'm no longer in that phase. My feedback forms are designed to get testimonials for my marketing and data that event planners can use. When you're in the early stage, you actually need to know what people liked, what they didn't, what worked, and what didn't. And so you have to film it, and you have to watch yourself back, all of it. You have to watch. You can't look this way while the video's on. You can't. People do that. They put the video on. They say, "I'm going to review myself on video," and then they scroll on their phone because they can't handle watching themselves. They're too embarrassed. It's like, yeah, you got to watch it.
Well, my way around that is to watch 5 seconds first. Then I go up to 1 minute, and then I can sit down and watch the whole thing. So I feel for everybody who has to go through that. So for now, Brian, any final takeaways that you had from your experience recently that you would love to pass on?
Yeah. So when we come all the way back to that kind of, college campus, room of 10, the feedback from those students was tremendous. It wasn't hooping and hollering or cheering or wild laughter, but every single one of them came up and asked me to sign my book at the end of it. I had a little conversation with each one of them. They told me their stories. Some of them have followed me on the socials since. And I always keep that in mind. It's like, I think you will only ever know the impact you had on a very, very tiny percentage of your audiences. I've had students DM me on Instagram and say, hey, back in 2016, you spoke at my campus for freshman orientation, and I was so nervous back then, and I didn't want to leave my dorm, but you inspired me to meet some new people. And because I did that, I met this person, and that led to this thing, and then I got an internship and discovered I like this thing that now I'm a professional in. Now I've just been promoted to manager. And you just go, they didn't come out to me after. I had no idea that this person just existed in the world. And so that's the real big takeaway is you're making an impact on people, sometimes even if you don't do a good job, if you're in that early phase. You could actually do a mediocre job and still just plant one little seed for somebody that turns into something over time.
Right. So keep doing it.
So keep doing it.